Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs for short, the United Nations' best efforts to make the world a better place. Because, let's face it, we face some daunting challenges at the moment. The idea is a global blueprint for member states on 17 different areas of cooperation, including things like poverty eradication, climate change, equality, and education. They were outlined in 2015 with the eye towards achieving them by 2030. But the world is nowhere near completing these goals, and after 2 years of the pandemic, the ambitions of the before times are all on life support. Just take a look at this recent New York Times headline. The pandemic erased 2 decades of progress in math and reading. Scores in reading for American 9-year-olds on the National Assessment of Educational Progress fell by the largest margin in more than 30 years after 2 years of school closures, remote learning, and a diminishing access to education overall thanks to COVID-19. And not just in the United States, of course, 24 million students globally from pre-K to university are now at risk of never returning to school after prolonged closures. That's according to the United Nations report on the status of the Sustainable Development Goals. The pandemic has also undone more than 4 years of progress on poverty eradication, pushing 93 million more people into extreme poverty in 2020 alone. It's a brutal blow to the United Nations' #1 goal, ending poverty in all its forms everywhere. The #2 goal, that's ending hunger, achieving food security, and improving nutrition. And we're behind on that goal as well. 1 in 10 people worldwide today are hungry. 1 in 3 lack access to adequate food. And the war in Ukraine continues to trigger global food shortages. Climate change is what the United Nations has called a crisis multiplier. The UN has linked increased droughts, floods, and heat waves to rising poverty, hunger, and instability. And according to the UN's Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, with the participation and endorsement of all 193 member countries, the world's window to avoid catastrophe is closing rapidly. The world is also seeing the highest level of violent conflict since 1946, and a quarter of the world's population, as of the end of 2020, live in conflict-affected areas, delaying SDG efforts to realize global peace. As the United Nations convenes for this year's General Assembly, the first with some semblance of normalcy after years spent apart, rescuing the SDGs is top priority for UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres because he says we don't have a moment to lose now.